Welcome everybody back to Gringos Liberados, the English CBLOL podcast. My name is Trajan. Today I'm joined by Hawk and RMC, and now for the first time ever, debuting again on the most important part of the CBLOL English today, Sophchan. Welcome, our live reporter from the Sao Paulo studio. Welcome. How do you feel on now joining us here in the podcast sphere, as well as from the arena?
So excited. Thank you guys for the warm welcome. It's amazing to be able to be with you guys for the broadcast, even though I'm not on the Discord with you. I can always hear you guys casting. I'm always paying attention. It's great for me to pick up all the funny and important bits that you guys pick up on the broadcast. So it's very nice to have that side of things. At the same time, gosh, the interaction with the audience has been absolutely stunning. Everyone is just so excited. And I mean, Brazilian audiences have that trait. Always. We are always so excited. We have the biggest of energies. And also, I would say, like, good competitive spirit as well, because you are not going to be hearing, at least on CBLOL, that much booing. It's just like, oh, we're better. Yeah, let's get it. You guys are better and stuff. And it's not going to be like any sort of deprecation in any way. So I think everyone is like very nice, and all the people that I have been interviewing were just wonderful beings, from the cosplayers to the diehard fans for Pain Gaming. You're always one of the biggest crowds. Let's go. One of the biggest crowds in CBLOL. And talking to the players as well, some of those that are newer to me, because of course I have been watching CBLOL since I was 16, 17 years old and stuff. It's been 10 years, y'all. It's been 10 years. And I had the opportunity to interview Sir T and Mikão. They were the gods of when I was just a viewer. And they were like up there. And to be able to be in front of those legends, talking to them, seeing how great people they are, and just giving me a little bit of an insight on their past experiences, on what they think about the competitive scene in Brazil like nowadays. It's wonderful, and to share it with you guys like here on the podcast as well. Hell yeah. Thank you so much for the invitation.
Okay, but you 30, sure, Macau, whatever, it kind of washed up. You got to interview the GOAT though. You got to interview Ranger. That's the real one. How was it interviewing Ranger? We all enjoyed you slipping that question in about the retirement and stuff as well.
Oh goodness. Oh, I was upset. I was upset to hear him say that. I was legitimately upset. I don't want to see, like, just because the team didn't do super well in this split, to think about not continuing your career. There's so many changes in rosters that could help. Maybe, I don't know, even switch ups with coaches as well. They could bring so much improvement to the team. And as in an in-person level, he's just a sweet bean. He is so nice. He has been at the studio for the whole 3 days of the last weekend, so the Friday and the weekend. So it was very nice to finally have the opportunity to really talk, because we had been talking in the backstage, and he's just an overall great person.
He is the Lulu costume.
That's awesome.
Ranger in real life. That's actually him. That's just his personality. the little fairy ranger for sure. Okay, right. So let's talk about playoffs, everybody. Let's talk about round one.
Okay.
It was a bit of a state. It was a bit of a mess. There was one series that seemed to go. Even the series that was 3-0 was just confusing and convoluted and complicated all the way down. Right. So
it was a CBLOL series, you know, like that was how we can describe the first week of playoffs. I think, Trajan.
In this
yeah,
I just want to say that my predictions for round one, barring the Fluxu K-Star games, were actually on point. Like, I told you guys that Pain was going to be 3-0, but it'd be a close one individually.
Red, didn't you?
I did, but if you remember, the caveat and the reason why I said that was because I said that's the only way Red win that series. If Loud win one game, they're gonna sweep it. And sure enough, Loud won game 2 and they swept. And I was like, the moment they won game 2, I was like, this is over. This is done. Like, I'm so sad.
Oh no.
Yeah, it was tough, man. All right, let's start. Let's go down the order. Let's start with Fluxu and K-Star. So this really set the tone.
Yeah.
This was so messy from the whole game 1 to 5. Neither team looked particularly great on that day, right? There were so many highs and lows. Hawk, give us your take on VKS and Fluxu. Like, do you think anyone came out this series looking good? Like, what's the takeaway here?
Man, that series, dude. So, I wasn't able to watch that series live too because I was working. So I went back like late at night, like 3 in the morning, watch Vivo K Stars
All the
Fluxu just
wreckage.
play this slobber knocker of a series, man. I mean, it was good that I watched it at 3 a.m. because I think I would have lost brain cells otherwise. Like, at least I was already losing brain cells by being up at 3 in the morning. Like,
gradually.
no one came out of this looking good at all.
Yeah, so here's
Like-
the person who really didn't come out looking good for me, right? Was House.
Yeah.
House did
Yeah.
not look
Oh my
in
God,
game
yeah.
4, sure. In game 5, he was certainly like awake by that point, but games 1 to 3, man, literally invisible, genuine liability. And this is the problem that I think I raised on a previous podcast. It's like, this guy, if this happens again, which it did, this guy's the new #1 playoffs choker, man. FMB looks kind of good now.
Yeah,
He's not
man.
playoffs choker anymore. House is now the king of the playoffs collapse. I don't know. It makes me sad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I would say in game 2 though, I did, to give Fluxu credit, I did think their game 2 was the cleanest poke comp we've seen out of CBLOL so far.
Mm.
His laning was really, really brutal. So we won't talk about that. But once he got out of lane, he understood what he had to do as Jace. And sure, he died, but he always made sure that he got his pound of flesh on the way out. So I'll give him game 3. It wasn't an MVP performance by any means,
Mhm.
but he understood the assignment. And that's not something we can say of a lot of poke comps in CBLOL.
Not a lot of Jace mids know what to do.
Except for Nosferus. Nosferus looks
Nosferus
really good on
knows.
Jace.
He knows.
Yeah, Nosferus got the sauce.
Yeah. So I don't know where they go from here, right? We'll get into Fluxu a little bit
Home.
more later, but it was certainly not the Fluxu that we saw in week 8 and week 7. Week 9, we saw that happen, and it literally was the same exact story from Split 1. Almost bar for bar, the same movie as Tay put it in that interview was played out. So I don't know, man. I don't know where we have to lay the blame here. If there's blame to be lane, is it coaching for not getting the most out of it? Is it players for having like playoffs nerves and not being able to bring it together? I don't know, but it was.
Yeah, it's
Not it.
tough, man. Like, Fluxu just. I mean, Trajan, you and I were both saying on the podcast, I think for week 7, that Fluxu looked like the best team in the league. We were saying they looked even potentially better than Pain. Like, it was them too, with Red falling off, and Loud wasn't quite up at that level yet. And I mean, it's brutal to see what happened. And look, I mean, the series was like peak entertainment. Like, we're sitting here joking around, like it was a fun series. But I mean,
Yeah.
it was rough to watch Fluxu go out that way. And I feel like in the other series, like, sure, INTZ got 3-0'd. Red, they kind of collapsed in their series against Loud. But I feel like both Red and INTZ showed me sparks of competitiveness where it's like, okay, like, if they fix a couple things, they're going to be fine. Neither of the two teams in the lower bracket games gave me, like, a lot of hope moving forward in playoffs.
No, man. No, it's.
I was like, man, they're pretty good if you fix team fighting, laning, macro communication,
Yeah.
shot calling, like.
It was not inspirational stuff down there. It was like it was the deepest of the trenches in the lower bracket. They were fighting for their lives, and no concern for polish or anything like this. It was messy down there. So VKS end up taking it 3-2. They do clutch it out. Grell particularly was a big standout for me in that series. I think for all of us, he certainly hit.
Grell
heads way
truthers
more.
rise up.
Okay, the Grell truthers.
I think I'm the
have
only
been-
one.
Have been telling
have
us all it's
risen.
gonna happen for weeks, and it finally.
Wait,
did.
so is this where we discuss VKS? Because I don't want to be the wet blanket here, but the fires of Grell might not burn as hot as you think it might. Just saying.
We'll come back to VKS.
What do you mean the fires of Grell may not burn us?
Okay,
hot?
we'll come back to
We'll come back to
changes.
VKS.
Okay,
So
okay.
we'll
We'll get back to
talk
this
about
later.
these teams in a bit more detail. But the second series, so 3-2 VKS. VKS advanced. Fluxu out at 6th again after I think qualifying. They qualified 5th and then came out at 6th. The exact same result as in Split 1.
Yes.
So next game was Pain versus INTZ. Uklasiku, the PyNTZ, right? And actually, banger 3-0. The closest 3-0 we've seen in a long time, right?
Yeah.
It was a wild one. And unfortunately, we were going to have Rude Dude on this podcast, and we had to pull RMC in last minute. Unfortunately, this does mean that he has to be here and be insufferable about B-Boy and about Pain, because B-Boy was crazy. He was godlike, right? RMC, tell us about B-Boy, man. You love to tell us about B-Boy.
I already said it last week, when we were doing all the All-Star stuff. Like, that's why I had him as my All-Star, because he just
showed up.
is that good. And actually, I think Pain winning speaks for itself, right? That was the expected outcome, and they did everything they were supposed to do. If anything, I actually want to talk a little bit more about INTZ because I think they showed up massive, and I do think there were moments they could have won that game. They made it incredibly competitive with Pain, and ZZK especially in that top lane up against Weiser. That was a treat for the eyes. Ninja Kiwi was, I think, my biggest standout player for INTZ because biggest, I don't know if standout's the right word, but he was the biggest surprise for me on INTZ.
Yeah.
I thought he'd fold under B-Voy, to be honest. And Pro Delta, B-Voy, those were absolutely cracked. Ninja Kiwi took turret, died solo to Pro Delta. I thought that was crumble him, but he still came back huge. He did cost them the game in game 3, but at the same time, he was the one who even put them in a position
It's such
where
a complex call
they could have
to
won
try
that.
and make, right?
It is.
For such a young player, for a
yeah.
young team that doesn't really have someone maybe necessarily who can have the foresight while also being about to lose a series to Pain, right? It's tough.
I do feel like that's actually a really interesting take though, RMC, because to me, one of the most concerning takeaways for INTZ moving forward, especially if they're able to take down VKS and with their remaining opponents in the bottom lane being, you know, Titan, Frosty, Root, Seos, and then B-Voy Pro Delta, is I was actually a little concerned, and I thought Ninja Kiwi in the bottom lane alongside Neo would actually be able to match up against Pain a little bit better. I thought that B-Voy is better than Ninja Kiwi, but that was the most concerning look for me with INTZ being competitive against this top 3, was I thought that the bot gap was actually a little too big for my liking. Ninja Kiwi still made good plays, don't get me wrong, but I was actually a little surprised. It was more one-sided in the bottom lane than I thought it would be, whereas the rest of the map I thought was going blow for blow really well.
Yeah.
So that is actually my biggest concern for INTZ that I take away from that series, is that, yeah, it was really competitive, but at the end of the day, B-Voy was just better.
I totally agree. I think the highlight there for me was Pro Delta. I know B-Voy was absolutely cracked.
Yeah.
But Pro Delta, like
Pro Delta was a beast.
the
I thought it was crazy,
positioning,
yeah.
the spacing, especially on the Lulu, was just delightful to watch. You'd be like, well, where's Pro Delta? You can't even see because both characters are just so close together. And she's going to be blocking out the abilities with body blocks. She's got everything. That Lulu had the knockups every time it was necessary, having the wild growth, even preemptively when it was just trying to get that extra bit of health on the bar for B-Voy. And everything alongside it just made for a bot lane that was absolutely outgapped. Like, they were insane compared to Ninja Kiwi. And I totally agree with you there, RMC. Ninja Kiwi had that moment with the dive, and you feel like, well, this is it. This is it. It's gonna look awful from here on, and it didn't. It didn't. I think the Civiv worked out well for them. I think it was good utility with the movement speed, but at the end of the day, you weren't able to do that much damage because Pro Delta was protecting the rest of the team so well. And Weiser, of course, with the Jackson, couple of these picks, was very nice to just go on the back line. So I think that was a little bit of a better draft as well in the second game here, as you mentioned. But overall, the players felt more prepared, I would say.
Yeah, for sure. And I don't think that Ninja Kiwi and Neo were going to be like the best bot lane. I guess it was expectations, right? Because I was expecting them to get like utterly smashed, not even close. Because I think Pro Delta and B-Voy are the best laning duo right now.
Yeah,
followed by Titan Frosty. So because of that, I expected them to get smashed. And when they didn't, I was very pleasantly surprised. They were still making proactive plays. And they weren't the biggest gold gap on the team. That was actually what kind of surprised me. Nosferus, despite his really good chase play, actually ended up being the biggest gap in their laning GD at 15. So that to me was kind of interesting as well. And I thought that Ninja Kiwi outperformed expectations, though I will agree with you, Hawk. It is a little bit concerning that they might have struggles hanging out in the top 4 in that bot lane a little bit.
Yeah. I think that the thing that stands out to me for that, especially when we saw the Lulu game come out from Pro Delta, it reminded me of the early in the split when it was just all enchanters and we're thinking, well, no, how are support supposed to show their value in this meta, right? And some of the Lulu players, like Pro Delta back then and Frosty back then as well, was when you see their exact like polymorph timing and the ult timing and the ways you said Sophchan, they're actually body blocking and being a support. They can do so much in a game, in an individual team fight, by picking the right moment and the right target for their spells. And Pro Delta was absolutely all over that in the Lulu game. He went straight back to that setting and was the most useful enchanter that's ever enchanted, you know? And it made that pick.
I know on the desk we were saying, I think it was in game 1 that Pro Delta got like super snubbed for MVP of the game. Like
Yes.
like had 100% KP on Lulu. Like
Oh my god,
disgusting
yes.
game. I remember me and Rude were pretty baffled by it.
Yeah.
Like the MVP. Honestly, we were like it should have been Pro Delta, man. Like I just to me. I'm actually curious. Was anyone here one of the ones that voted Seos for first team All Pro support? Trajan, both of you did?
Yeah,
Oh
RMC did.
my
Well,
goodness.
let's see this week.
I did.
Okay, we'll find out this
Oh
week when Pain
my!
and Loud
Because look,
play. We'll
Seos
see.
did actually have a good week too. They're
Yeah.
both, to me, they were clear top 2.
Yeah,
but I
they're-
just feel
they're
like
the
Pro
only two
Delta
in
to
the
me is
conversation.
so obviously the best support in the league. I think he's
Agreed.
just amazing. Like in terms of just how much impact that Pro Delta's had game in, game out, I think outvalues any support in terms of his ability to just like win games from that position in a split where support has not been the most impactful role too. So, I mean, I'm super impressed because like you said, you know, the Lulu, it's like, like shoot, man, like it's gonna be boring as hell. He's not gonna do anything. And he did a lot. It was great.
Yeah.
And Hawk, like I think I remember possibly from the second game of the series for Pro Delta, he had not just like 100% kill participation, he also had 9 assists on 9 minutes. It was 1 assist per minute
Wow.
that he had
That's
in the
insane.
game.
Yeah.
It's just absolutely crazy. And I think the moment that he didn't have 100% kill participation through assists, it was because he got a kill himself. So it's just bonkers. And I think it really shows how much the team has been able to coordinate and go through things around the map. Because yes, Pro Delta was alongside Bivoy all the absolute entirety of the time, but still you could see Pro Delta going and helping Decado in the mid lane, helping Carioca having those plays and scouting out the area to protect for objectives, because I think Pain was so dominant on objectives as well. So most of that is all the communication and coordination that this team has shown in the playoffs so far. And I would agree with Hawk every step of the way. Pro Delta is the MVP around here, and it has to be recognized.
Yeah.
Yeah.
it
I
definitely
also just want to say, RMC, I know this is my last Pro Delta shill point. I mean, not that I need a shill for a pain
No,
player.
I'm here for it.
Yeah. Not that RMC needs me to shill for a pain player, but RMC, you're a big stats guy. You know, the most important support stat, Pro Delta leads the league in support solo kills. So, you know, that really makes him
Well,
There you go.
the best
He's got
support.
two
The
now, right?
best.
That's
Yeah,
it.
he's got 2 now. 1 in playoff,
got
1 in regular
2.
season. That was why I lost my mind when I saw the kill. It was off screen. I saw the kill feed and I'm like, wait, he just solo killed again.
They're
So
both
funny,
on the way,
Uh-huh.
right?
I cannot believe he's
Crazy.
both
Yeah.
two, like most dangerous Lulu in the West. Like what
I
else
know.
needs to be said? Like
He's coming. He's coming
Yep.
for your carries,
Yeah.
bro. Don't leave him alone
Yep.
in your lane, because he will just kill you. So the one thing that really stuck out to me, right, in this game, in this series for INTZ versus Pain, INTZ put up a lot of good stuff, but it really felt like the most clear. These are, I guess, apart from Yampi, right? But these are 5. Like, this is a young, talented, super high potential ceiling team that has a lot of good things. They've got a good idea of how to play the game. They've got hands to back it up. And they just came up against the most veteran, synergized. They've been together for 1,000 years. They're like, they're always in the final. They're huge names in the region. And they just like, they couldn't quite get over them, right? They washed up against the wall and they didn't quite make it because Pain just clutched it out and did not fumble when the chips were down. And INTZ fumbled a couple times, just losing control of it in like the second game with Dinkado's Azir. There was the fight where Dinkado gets a triple because INTZ don't know where to go. They don't know who to focus on and they throw that lead away. And then Dinkado becomes too much of a problem. The last game, as we've touched on, Ninja Kiwi on the Ziggs. And we don't know once again whose call that is. It's like, you know, you have to come back and help us.
True.
No, you can push. They just don't know quite how to use their tools right. And it just doesn't quite come together at the end.
yeah.
And I think if Pain weren't Pain, if it was any other team potentially, I don't know if they'd have had the resilience to deal with the skill that INTZ has. But they just weren't enough. And that's so close, right? And that's why I want to see this roster at least hopefully stay together in some form. Because they're so close, man. And if they can keep improving like that, they'll be doing it.
I also, the last thing I want to say on this series as well is like something that made it so hard for INTZ is, I mean, like Weiser showed his MVP medal that series, man.
Yeah.
Like he got blasted in lane in game 1. He lost lane in game 2 and yet still had massive impact on the Jackson and R both games. Like I have never seen a Jax be that out of the game economically and finish 6-1-10, be a massive split push threat, huge in the team fights. Like, I mean, it's just unbelievable how gracefully he was able to lose against like our biggest X Factor top laner in the league.
Yeah.
And that was a huge thorn in the side of INTZ because they're used to having ZZK beat guys like that in lane and then just rolling over team fights 4v5. No, because they couldn't, because Weiser was just that goddamn good. And so, I mean, like I was beyond impressed at how well ZZK laned. Like, credit where credit's due. He took on the MVP and he performed really well. But Weiser still showed up and made fights just impossible. The ultimate fifth man, as I called him.
They beat the
That's
carry
why he's
out
our
of him,
regular
man.
season MVP.
Yeah,
literally.
Yeah.
They beat the carry out of ZZK. Urgot, specific counter pick, loved it. Great laning, didn't work out. There were other problems to deal with.
Completely useless in that
got
composition,
the Olaf
though.
again.
Completely useless in that composition.
He didn't even build Hullbreaker.
We're playing full dive with an Urgot. Like it was the best lane counter pick ever and the worst composition pick ever.
Yeah, and then
which I respect it. Like going for it, I respect it. It's not like a bad pick.
And the way he said it was like, this is my Jax counter, right? I'm gonna leave Jax open so they take it, and I'm gonna pick Urgot and I'm gonna win lane, and he did, right? That was the goal. They just didn't really have the rest of the plan, I suppose, in place.
I called it the pineapple on pizza pick. Like it was, it like for some it was fantastic, but for others it looked really bad. Like it was weird.
Yeah,
you could see the progression of ZZK too from his picks. Like Urgot, I win lane, and then like, okay, it wasn't enough. I go back to carry. I pick Olaf, and then the third game is like, I give up. I pick Cassante because I want to lose.
I don't care anymore.
It doesn't matter.
I can't do it, man. Just give me Cassante. You win this one. I've done all I can. That was unfortunate, and Weiser then had a big Gwen game, so he's ready to pull the carries out as well. So Pain Gaming 3-0 over INTZ, but as I say, very close 3-0. INTZ still looking very much like I would expect them to roll over most people in the lower bracket, given how they played this series. And we'll see how that goes against VKS. VKS, if they can polish up and sharpen up, maybe, but I expect INTZ to be favored there, and we'll get into that at the end of the show when we do predictions. The last series was Red versus Loud, and Red Canids, what are we doing? What's happening, bro? After that game one, we thought they'd arrived. We thought Red Canids had finally got it together. They found the solution, and then they just absolutely sprinted the rest of the series.
I mean,
don't know,
it was crazy too, right? So game one is like the cleanest Red Canids game I've ever seen in my life. Game two is like Loud counterblasted them. And I'm like, okay, like it's going to be like a trade of blows, like, Red struck first, Loud struck back. It's going to be competitive. And then Red just completely lost their minds in game 3 and 4, like I have never seen in my life. I mean, Titan was definitely tilted. Like, there's no other way around it, right? Like, you can't get that Omega fed on Zeri and then just like that. We were saying he was doing the Jackie Love. I think that was worse than Jackie Love. I gotta be honest. Like, that was some mega sprinting. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah, that was super brutal. You know what? Game 2, I firmly believe Titan got tilted by game 2. Red Canids picked Lucian and then didn't play around the Lucian fast enough. Like, it was Loud getting to the bot lane first every single time, and then Titan's like, guys, and they're like, oh, we're here, we're coming, and Titan's like, I'm dead. To
give Red a little credit, playing. Sorry, so I'll pass it over to you in just a sec. To give Red a little credit though, is playing like a volatile bot lane when you have Ivern as your jungler against Nocturne, who is really good into Ivern, is really hard. So I'm gonna give them that credit of like Loud. I like their game plan of just attacking bot perma against the Ivern. I thought that was a good strat. But anyway, so what were you gonna say?
No, I was just gonna say that it felt very unfortunate for Titan there, because I totally agree with you guys. It feels like Titan was always expecting for the rest of the team to gather up, to be there in a bot lane, to have presence for the Drake. And they just didn't. And I feel like I am not the biggest fan of the Leona pick for the third game, for example, for Frosty. I think, I don't know, something different. I know that the Alistar was picked on the other side. Like, I don't know if it was previously, if it was before. Yeah, no, I don't know exactly what was the order. And the Nautilus was out of the board.
Pick 5. Alistar was R5, I think.
5. Yeah. Okay, yeah. So, and Nautilus and Rel were out of the table. They were both banned. So I understand you still wanted to have a sort of engaged tanky frontline as a supporter, but at the same time, gosh, Leon is not really doing that much, and especially when you have Tanoz on LeBlanc, you have Route on Kai'Sa. You just have a team that can reposition fast enough, so they just see Zenith's Blade come in, and they're like, "Goodbye." I don't really care. You're trying to engage on me, and even though when I saw Croc going Trundle, I was like, "Is this a good pick?" And A just having the Poppy being very, very good in the split so far, I was feeling a little more confident. But when I saw the bot lane and how they were trying to work around Titan and just not doing it fast enough, it just felt very, very sad, because I agree with you guys in regards, like, seeing Red in the first game. It's like, man, they got it. Look at this win. So clean, so swift. They just finish it up. And then, well, where did that go? And basically went in regards to, like, where's the experience, why they're bringing into the table to be like, all right, we understand that we don't have the upper hand this time around, so we need to try to bounce back. We need to try to understand how to bounce back and not let it affect our nerves so much as it did.
I maintain, until I hear definitive proof otherwise, that they had no idea they were going to pick Lucian in game 2 until they picked it. That they were like, we've got Ivern again,
Yeah.
nice. We got Robo, or we got Renekton. I literally called it Robo. We got Renekton, top lane, nice. Okay, we've
Yeah.
got this. We have this. Now, what do we put with this? How do we deal with what they've taken? And Titan's like, Lucian, I can crush this lane with Lucian, bro. I'm gonna pop off. You give me
Trajan.
Lucian, I'm gonna own these guys in lane. It's gonna be sick. And they're like, okay, sure, you have it. There you go.
Okay,
Let's
sure.
not forget in the draft as well. You know, we saw Renekton, Ahri, everything locked in, and I'm like, okay, like Titan should go for a hyper carry right here, something like Zeri, you know, that can just like carry the game late, and that mid game top side can bridge the game, and then Lucian gets picked, and we're like, what?
Yeah.
R5. That was like the last
yeah.
pick too. It was like you
Like-
saw everything and you picked this.
And dude, Lucian
Yeah.
Nautilus doesn't even really beat Kai'Sa Rel 2. Like, I hated the pick so much. It was not good.
Mhm.
Well, no, okay. I do think Lucian Nautilus as a duo does beat them because of the changes to Nautilus that allows him to proc off any engage support. So I think Lucian would have won that lane with any engage support,
But,
because Kai'Sa can't match early. But
That's
Rel
fair,
does
but
counter
Rel's so
Nautilus.
strong
and
in the
does screw
TV2
them.
though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's. I agree
Like,
with
I don't
that.
know. It's that, to me, at least, it wasn't hard winning enough to justify picking
Yes.
Lucian
Pick
in,
Trajan
in a
instead.
vacuum. And let's not forget as well, by the way, that Red, Loud rather, they screwed up like literally every bot dive, and yet Titan got none of the kills. Like, if Titan got like 1 or 2 of those shutdowns, that game is completely different. But instead, we got to team fights, and Titan was doing like 50 damage per auto attack to Robo. It was
Oh my
so
God,
upsetting
yeah.
to watch.
Like an item and a half behind Root or something. It was
Yeah.
so.
It was
cool.
so
Yeah.
upsetting to watch.
I want to say this as well.
Titan
I don't
tried
even
auto.
think Root played well this series. I actually thought this was one of Root's worst series he's played. He lost every single lane to Titan and Frosty in the actual 2v2s. In game 2, the only reason why he got that far ahead was because bot lane was never a 2v2. It was a 4v4 all the time. And like you said, Hawk, Titan couldn't pick up any of the kills. I think if Titan picked up the kills, Root just gets slammed again. So it's very troubling to me that was the situation for Loud, that Root can't win these lanes, and he's having to come back later in the mid to late.
They won game 4, didn't they? But yeah, you're right. They definitely weren't
no,
as
game
dominant in the
4
2v2 as we hoped.
I think they were still pushing
In
in.
game
Like,
4,
Titan on the Zeri, I think you were the most.
Because that
He was
game
winning
4
that,
was
yeah.
the one where at level 2 Root got first blood and killed Titan.
Yeah, but even then, like, Titan just bounced back anyways and still had a CS lead. So that's why I find it very troubling that Root wasn't able to win this lane. Now, granted, I do think Titan Frosty is an incredibly strong laning duel. Their problem has never been in lane. Their problems
their
are late
problem's
in the
been in
game,
lane.
and we saw
Yeah.
it.
I think their problem has been in lane up until this series. I
Really?
think this was one of their best laning series that they've shown all year. I think the amount that they die and give over free advantages, like they're aggressive duo. They'll push and try and push people in the tower and get CS lead, but they give over so many free advantages by not respecting either their duo or the enemy jungler in this split up to this point.
Okay,
I don't like
that's
their
fine,
laning
yeah.
at all.
I think I agree with both of you. I think that they are an extremely strong 2v2 duo, but they also do make some pretty critical errors. And especially, I think Red as a team does a pretty bad job of helping them early game as well. Which, so I think it's a
100%.
kind of a team thing. You know, like for example, in game 4 against Loud, right? Like, they hit level 2 first. Let's go for the 2v2. But Reed, and especially Seos, I mean, they giga chatted that.
Yeah.
Literally took, like, we're sitting there taking damage, killed the last melee minion, and then one-shot Titan. I was like, holy crap. They just understood that 2v2 better. Like, it was crazy. So I think that Titan and Frosty are really, really good as a duo in lane, except for when they have to play a little bit more defense. And then that's when they struggle a bit.
Yeah. Hands good, brain, we won't talk about it.
Yeah, it's a little questionable. Questionable.
So, we had this 3-1 win for Loud over Red. Red showed us, in game 1, they showed us once again that the ceiling is still there, that there is a peak they can reach. And throughout the rest of it, they showed the possibility of still egregious tilting, terrible decision-making, that has been dragging them down and putting them in the positions where they've had to make such crazy comebacks for all the splits. So the problems are still very much not solved for Red. And going into the losers bracket, they're still highly seeded, so they get to play against the winner of VKS and INTZ. But I don't know how confident I feel about this team in the losers bracket, given the people that are going to be coming down in front of them. And I think Loud dealt super well with the aggression and the chaos that was palmed their way. They showed they are resilient. They showed they can also come back from deficits in the same way that Pain did versus INTZ. So both of these teams now matching up in the next round is very interesting, because neither of them can be counted out. Neither of them are making silly mistakes. Neither of them are goofing and gaffing like some of their opponents have been.
I kind of have a question for you guys, actually, real quick. Because in a best of 5 series, I'm actually a little concerned about Red, because after that series against Loud, I'm starting to think this team has champion pool problems, in that they all have a bunch of different champions that they can play. But game 1, let's not forget, they looked really good, but they got like the god draft. Not just in that their draft was better, it was also everyone's best champion. It was FNB's like most played Cassante, Aegis' second most played Ivern, Titan's most played Xayah, like 100% win rate Xayah. It was Frosty's most played like mega win rate Rakan. And then later in the series, Loud was like, oh, maybe we just don't give over like Xayah Rakan. And then Red struggled a lot more. And so it's not like, you know, they can't go things to like, say, Kai'Sa Rel or whatever, but it just isn't as... It's not as convincing when they're not on like their favorite champs, because I was looking through the stats, like all of them basically played like the same 2 or 3 champions throughout the entire split, other than some one-offs.
Okay. I haven't thought about it that way. I still think they've got big enough champ pools, but to me, game 1, I didn't think it was like even despite getting the Omega draft that you're talking about, the Exodia draft, the fact that they took 33 minutes to close out actually was a bigger problem to me, and that speaks less to their champs, and to me that felt more like their mid-game and decision making, which we've criticized all throughout the split. So maybe the champ pool is an issue. But I think before that, they need to fix their mid-game. Because if they can't fix their mid-game, I don't care what they draft. Like, you could draft the best champions. You could draft the worst champions in the game. And I still would be more worried about your mid-game than I am about the draft at that point.
Yeah, because for me, the draft concern... Sorry, just to explain it really quick, Trajan. The draft concern to me is not that, like... It's not like, oh, they're not picking X good champion because they can't play it. I think they just straight up don't look as good when they're not playing like their few favorites. And that is like where the concern lies for me.
I think the biggest criminal in that regard is Frosty. I think Frosty off Rakan is half the player he is on Rakan. And that list it keeps getting worse every time he goes down the priority.
I also think Titan is a lot better at Xayah than anything else too.
I think his Kai'Sa is really good as well.
Kai'Sa's good, but I think his Xayah is better.
I think Xayah is better, but I think maybe they're potentially pigeonholing themselves in how many different champions and styles they allow themselves to play down in the bot side. I think that Titan can do more. I think Frosty kind of can't, from what I've seen. I don't think he has a deep pool of champions he's good at. He can play Leona.
Yeah.
We don't love how it looks. Even his Nautilus, I'm not a huge fan of his Nautilus.
Like, it's just fine. It's just fine.
Yeah, it just exists because it's a good champion, right?
He doesn't play Alistar. They don't give him Rel. If they get Rel, they give it to Aegis, and they don't prioritize Rel in the same way other people do.
They don't prior Rel
and the way that Seos can dominate on Rel, and the
Yeah.
way that ProDelta can. We never see Frosty do this. I just don't think he offers the same that the other supports do, even on the engages when it's a small pool of good champions.
Maybe it's a hot take, but I think the engage champions are actually limiting Frosty, because I think his mechanics, like on Nautilus and Leona, they don't look great because there's only so much you can do with them.
Yeah.
I actually want to see him go back to Enchanters because I remember his Renata and Lulu earlier this split.
His
like,
Renata
in the
I really
beginning.
liked, actually. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
He crushed lane. That wasn't a Titan takeover lane game. Those were Frosty takeover lane games. And I kind of want to see Frosty go back to those if Rakan gets banned. Pro Delta has shown the blueprints or the potential plan you can do with Enchanters right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm definitely on the same boat too.
I do think, though, Red banned Rel all 3 games they were on blue side in that series when most other teams have been B1ing that champion. That, to me, is like, if there's one like really easy fix that you have in the 2 weeks before you play again, it's that you just got to, like, someone has to pick up Rel, whether it's Aegis or Frosty or both. Like, there's just no excuse for not playing this champion in this meta. It's unbelievably good. Also, not just in this meta, it's good in CBLOL, man. Like, it loves to scrap and skirmish and team fight, and that's what we do. Like, I just don't think there's an excuse for not playing Rel right now.
Yeah, I think so too. It's definitely a case of limiting yourself. I am totally on board, RMC. Like, get yourself back to Enchanters. Don't limit yourself. So you're trying to do something that you know you can do on Rakan, but on other champions, but you can't quite succeed. You're not getting all that outcome out of it. You can have the mechanics, but you're still not getting the best of results out of it. And I agree with Trajan too, that if you have a player like that, like Frosty, and they are just feeling like, oh, I play this. When I play the other things, I limit myself to the Leona. I don't get the Alistar. I will get the Nautilus. And then it's just so small. I was just thinking about that when we're talking about the 3rd game of the series. It was the one that they got the Leona. And when I was looking at the bans, if I was Frosty, it would have been like, well, there's nothing else to play because they picked Alistar. There was no Nautilus and there was no Rel because they banned the Rel themselves. So it's very counterintuitive when you can have the advantage, as you said that, Hawk. Like, when you have the blue side, why don't you get the guarantee pick on the Rel? If it's on the board, you get it. Either jungle, either support. It's so versatile. So it feels like overall, including what you said, RMC, about the mid game, like, they don't know how to be versatile. They don't know how to change things up. And maybe that's even why they're not that great on the mid game in regards to finishing things up and trying to gather all the advantage into getting a clean game. Because when they can't get that advantage from the very start in regards to mentality, how are they going to organize in the mid game? Because even if you have an advantage for gold and items, well, how do you put it? If your players are lacking in many of these spheres, and maybe you're just having a hard time as well with the matchup in particular because you deliberately chose to not pick a very, very good champion, right?
It's weird too that
also
this
awkward.
discussion is for Red, right? Which is such a veteran team. We know FNB has a huge champion. We've seen Aegis do it. We've seen Envy and Titan. All of these guys have enough experience that this shouldn't be an issue. So I wonder how much of this is on coaching, how much is on the players. We know that in CBLOL, a lot of times players get final say on what they want to play. I don't know what's happening behind the scenes. This would be one of those where I'm very curious, like, who decides to draft and how are they picking it?
Yeah, me too.
It's an interesting question. Yeah, because the last thing I'll say on this too is Aegis has not been prioing Sejuani Maokai, which like kind of means that you need an engage more support. Like, can you put Frosty on an Enchanter if you're not playing Sejuani Maokai? Like, that feels like you need one or the other in this meta, it seems. And Aegis has been playing facilitators. I mean, in the series, he played 2 games of Ivor and a game of Poppy and a game of Trundle. All more facilitator-oriented champions, but none of them are engaged oriented. So it's just weird. It's a weird situation, but they've got hopefully 2 weeks to maybe make some adjustments.
True. I think from the interviews as well, like it felt like some of the teams, when I was talking to the coaches, like some of the teams, it felt like coach said, this is what we want to do. You can get comfortable with going for your comfy picks because I think what the enemy has allows you to do it. Then that's fine. And then you have another one that goes like, well, I think this is the best choice and we're going to focus on the most important player that they want to protect in the game. Either it's an ADC or it's a top laner or stuff like that. For example, I don't think I've seen that much priority on the mid lane in regards to how it's going to be snowballed around mid lane. I think they're all doing very, very good. So the rest of the team is trying to help more towards top and bottom. So it's interesting how some teams just working away and their coaches have more decision making, and the other ones are just like, well, I felt like I wanted to play this, so let's try to make it work around my bottom. It's very, very concerning, because you need a final say. You need someone to have a voice. If it's a player, then okay. But as long as it's a player that's always going to have the final shot calling decision, or else it just gets chaotic, and you're not going to have as much cohesion in how you're going to be drafting your game.
Yeah, cohesion definitely not something we saw much out of Red so far on that last series. So they drop into the losers bracket, and they will wait the winner of VKS and INTZ. Let's skip forward here and just talk a little bit more about Fluxu and VKS and get into kind of the more wider discussion points. So let's talk about Fluxu. It has been, as has been labeled on our run of show, a disappointing year for Fluxu. They did not, the two split project did not come to fruition. They had a very similar story on both sides. They have obviously enough name value and talent to get to a certain minimum level in the CBLOL, but when it really counts, the roster just fell apart both times. They made it to 5 games this time, which is an improvement, I guess, but overall they would have wanted to have more. Names like Bronze would expect to have more. Howls I expect more out of. Tay is a championship winner in the past, right? So where do we go with this team? Where do we go with these players? What do we take away from this? And what does Fluxu potentially do as an org moving on from this? If anyone has any just opening thoughts besides, because if someone doesn't say anything, I'm just going to start ranting about housing, and no one wants to do that. So,
I think I can start talking a little bit about the performance coming out in the bot lane from Brands and Jojo. I don't think they played badly. I think you guys mentioned earlier the house was really the most disappointing performance all throughout the split, which is awful, because you can see how great the player is. They know how to play all the champions. They decide to do it on the Ari, whether it's on the Azir, and then when you have the rest of the team just not really blending together, Brance is gonna get a quadra kill. Then how do you capitalize on it? Are you going to focus on getting that Baron? You're going to try to get the Elder Drake? Are you going to push in 1-3-1? Is it going to be a split push scenario? I feel like they have been lacking a lot of that. And even though they have a player that has been doing so good on champions like the Xayah, like the Kai'Sa, you can't really see it impacting the rest of the game. So it just feels like something that has to be mostly decided prior. This is how we play. You want to play around Brands? This is how we support Brands being the biggest damage dealer in the game and just getting us to victory. And I feel like they're not doing that. They're just solo queuing. Well, we are doing good in the bot lane. Why am I losing? It's very disappointing to watch, but I feel like they have a lot that can come out of it if they make these changes and adjustments, especially in regards to mid to late game.
Yeah, and then just kind of following up on that, the problem is, on paper, Fluxu have done just what Sophchan was saying, right? You've got Bruncy as your primary carry. The team is built that way, right? You've got Tay in the top side to weak side, precisely so you can send more resources to the bot lane specifically. House was meant to be that solo mid laner who can take over games without requiring resources. That's what we've seen from him in the past, and that was why, on paper, this roster makes sense. And that's why it's hard to fix, because reality doesn't match up to theory. And even if you want to change the players, who do you change, right? Obviously, you maintain Bruncy and Jojo, the one working part of this composition. Then you got to look at the top of the map. It's Tay, Desama's House. I would argue Tay did exactly what Fluxu asked him to do. He played weak side. So if you change Tay, that's more of the roster on paper, then you need somebody who demands resources. You can't play the Bruncy as much. Desama's and House on paper should have been fine. Their performance didn't live up to expectations, but who do you replace them with, right? House still has the potential to pop off. We see that in the regular season. And I don't see a mid laner who I'd say, okay, this would be a clear upgrade over House and would actually leave their team. Maybe you could take the Kiddo and Tinones. They're not leaving those teams, at least not right away, and not for Fluxu. Desamis, do we want to trade out Desamis? I feel like that's the only component who I'd say maybe we trade him out. And even then, I don't feel like Desamis was a terrible pick. I think he's still decent, average. But maybe that would be, to me, the 1% I might swap out, and maybe I'd pick AC for him, right? An aggressive jungler who can maybe pop off, and even then, huge question marks.
Get
I'm not
Ranger
sure. Flux is a really hard team for me to
Fluxy
look at.
content,
For
or
me-
get BRTT, get Ranger in, get Brunsey in, put him back in the jungle.
Trajan, you've cracked the code. For me, it's so weird because I just feel like I feel like whatever happened with Fluxu had to be some sort of like internal, like mental kind of thing. It's not like the players and their individual skill. So in that grounds, I think something has to change just because like you can't have had this 2 consecutive 6th places after like I remember this split we were saying like, oh my god, Fluxu, they look like they've really figured out their identity, like it's different this time. And then it wasn't different. Like they completely fell on their face. I mean, God, like it's crazy how much they just like gaslit me into thinking they would be good. And I like, but to be serious though, like it just something has to change, and I don't know what that is. But clearly, it's like as a roster, this roster didn't work. Even though all 5 of these players I think are really good, I think they're all like strong representatives of their roles. It's just. Yeah, it just fell apart at the most critical moments every time. I think like you said, RMC, I think Brunsey and JoJo is like, if you're gonna keep anything, keep that. Other than that, I don't think anyone's seat is safe, to be honest. Just based on like again expectations and execution there's a lot of distance between those two.
I think that Brunsey and JoJo for me were the best laning duo during the split. At least they were super strong in 2v2, getting solo like 2v2 kills, getting lane advantages without like a huge amount of assistance as well. I think they looked really good in the 2v2, and then and Brunsey was able to pop off later on as well, right? And JoJo, especially in the mid part of the split, when they started to get rolling, he was super clean on the Rakan and everything, like being the engager, being the decision maker in team fights. He was great. But I don't think that Fluxu in this series approached the game in a way that makes any sense against this opponent and with the players that they have. Why are we repeat ganking Gigo on Gnar while they're taking Dragon down in bot lane where your Brunsey is, where you could be playing with your Brunsey, and instead we're chain ganking a Gnar, failing to kill him multiple times in a row, when it just doesn't matter. This isn't going to win you anything. All this is doing is wasting your time, and who's making that decision? Who's thinking, this is what I should be doing with my time? I should be going top lane and ignoring the rest of the map. It's just bonkers. Who's making these strategies? If it's players on the fly, if it's coaches giving them these ideas, I don't know. But I just think they have a really flawed way of approaching this series and the game in general right now, and how to use the pieces that they have. Whenever they look like they've got the idea right, when they're playing through House and Brunsey, it looks great. When they try to divert into a new focus, it seems like they just completely lose the plot at how to like actually play League.
And again, too, after like week 7, we're like, oh my god, they figured it out. They know how to play League of Legends. Like, Tay doesn't even exist. House only exists when he really needs help. It's all about Brunsey and JoJo, baby. Like, they know how to play League. And then it, like, what happened? I
wonder if they got baited a bit by that, because Trajan, like you said, you thought Brunsey and JoJo were the best laning duo. They were up against Trigo and Damage, who I think on paper looked like the weakest bot lane in the playoffs, and I think they got baited by that.
Play your game, man. Like, don't play to the other team. Play your game.
Brunsey and JoJo would be able to smash the 2v2 without help, so they were like, we can free up the Samus for another lane, and then surprise, Trigo and Damage. Let's not forget, these guys have literally never not made a finals when they're together. And Damage woke up. So, like, Trigo and Damage
they
ended up actually winning
so
2v2.
hard. Dude, Trigo played 5 champions in that series. He played 5 different champions. Looked really good on basically all of them. And he's just like this guy that flies under the radar for the entire split and then shows up in playoffs and goes, all right, we've made it into playoffs. Now I'm going to try again. He's got a bit of a double lift kind of angle to him.
It's like Robo with just a little bit less inting, you know? Like,
kind of, actually.
Literally. So we have to give respect to him. We'll move on quickly because we took a long time to talk about these series as well. We'll talk a little bit about VKS. And the question being asked here is, do they win? Do they have a chance of beating INTZ? Is VKS... Do we feel good about what the good things we saw, or do we feel too bad about the bad things we saw in that series versus Fluxy?
I can start here because my thoughts are pretty solid. Like, I do not think VKS has a chance to win. However, I think they'll make it entertaining, and I think they'll probably take like at least a game. Like, that's where my thoughts are at. I do feel like VKS has good things going for them when they like remember how to like when they remember how to cook. You know, they seem to always forget the recipe, but sometimes they mix everything together the right way. And so I think they might be able to do that. But honestly, I think INTZ is a really solid team. And it comes down more to that than anything. Now, and I would have said the same thing about Fluxu. So who knows? Like, I feel like VKS has been a hard team to predict. I think they'll make it exciting, but they have not showed me anything that leads me to believe that they could be a legitimate contender right now. I think they're still way too reliant on like individual pop-off performances that elevate the team, which it's just not going to work.
They needed Grell to go big. They needed Gigo to go big in every single game, almost have a chance. They needed Trigo and Damage to hit playoffs form, and if they can't have all of those things working together, I don't think they can stand up individually to INTZ, and they need to stand up individually to function.
Like INTZ to me, despite being a less complete team than say Pain Gaming, which is why they got swept by them, they do feel like a complete team though.
Just a younger team.
They feel like they have things figured out. They know how they want to play the game, and it just comes down to like the execution in the critical moments. That's fixable.
Just experience.
Vivocade, I feel like they're a little bit more fundamentally
They've got
flawed.
experience, but it doesn't seem to help. Like, I don't think they have a clear idea what they're doing.
So, okay, a bit of a spoiler for some stuff that's going to happen this weekend.
Oh yeah.
Everybody keeps thinking INTZ is favored, but I'm going to say that Kate Stars, I think people are sleeping a lot on Kate Stars. Kate Stars, or maybe they're overestimating INTZ, because Kate Stars has a ton more experience than INTZ. Let's not forget INTZ, none of their players have ever won. And more importantly, only one of their players has ever even made a grand finals. There's a huge lack of best of 5 experience on this INTZ roster. And because of that, I'm actually a little bit worried for them. Their lack of experience showed in this series against Pain.
Definitely
and Kate Stars, they're an ugly team in how they win.
Yeah,
but
gross.
you can't deny that they win. And so
they're scrappy. I mean, no, you're right though. Like, being able to get in the cage match, and you know, it doesn't matter if you dislocate your jaw if you win the fight, right? Like,
and I think that might be what we see is Kate Stars will win barely. It won't look good. It won't look clean. But they'll just drag on the game so ITC makes a mistake.
You're not wrong.
They'll just snap on them. And the other thing too, Trajan, you mentioned they need all these conditions to come online. Well, we're getting there. Like Gigo has hit Gigod status. Trigo and Damage have looked the cleanest they have all split long. I think Katers are waking up, and I think they're going to make a deep lower bracket run. So yeah, I'm a little bit scared. Also, fun fact about Grell, his stats actually aren't better from that first playoff round compared to his regular season stat. The eye test looks good, but Grell is actually still dying about as much as he was in the regular season.
As a whole, the eye test looks the same for Grell.
Okay.
I think
okay.
Individual moments, I think, stand out really well in Grell, and he had some particularly high highs for him. But he always followed them up with a low straight afterwards. There was never like 2 highs in a row.
Because we were praising Grell a lot in the playoff series, and I was like, I want to do a graphic about how Grell has improved and how that's why Kaiser's going to win. I ran the stats and was like, it's just the same. Grell is exactly the same.
It's Gigo. And it's top.
Look, you gotta break a few eggs to make an omelet, RMC. That's what I think Grell's doing. That's what I think Grell's doing.
Who's to say that those conditions don't continue? Who's to say that Gigo does not continue to be good and that Trigo and Damage will continue to be good? I just don't. I guess for me, it doesn't feel. I don't know if they've got enough gas in the tank to keep making that run last against INTZ. And INTZ, you're absolutely right. They might take a big mental blow and just see 3-0 and go, man, we got smashed. When they really didn't, right? We have to hope that them and their coaches are looking at this game going, we had a lot to like in this series. That's
a VOD reviewable series right there. You know what I mean?
Cracked.
Like, it's not like, hey guys, forget that happened. New series next week. No, that's like you sit down with the coaches and you talk about that. It's like, okay. Yeah. Like we had winning positions in all 3 games. How could we have converted this? You know?
Yeah, 100%. What do you think, Soph? Do you think VKS have the source to take ITZ, or has the giant awakened, as it were?
I think I am in agreement with a couple of things you both have said. So I think I'm on the side of RMC with they have better experience with best of 5s. They have better experience. You asked if they're going to have the gas in the tank. I think that's one of the things that they do have. I think that's the one thing they have. I think they have gas in the tank. I think they can do exactly that. Just keep trying to push through. Get those champions that are going to lead into a late game scaling, get there, and then wrap up. It's not going to be beautiful. It's not going to be anything that you're going to be super proud of, but it's going to get you somewhere. And I also think that, of course, NTZ is not going to give in short, so it might be a 5-game series. But I would say Gigu, Trigo, and Damage in the bot lane there, they really get some spice going for K-Stars in this roster. So I think they are definitely going to be the one thing you gotta keep your eye on, because I don't think the rest. I agree about Grell. Like, well, is it growing? Well, it's not that much. So he's growling. He's growling. And when we mention like the rest of the roster for INTZ, there are some things that they need to improve in regards to mid game, some draft changes and stuff that, because you're used to having those best of fives being K-Stars, you just have more knowledge on the back to come out of this, because having all of it together can allow Trigo and Gigu to really shine. And just getting into a more ahead stage in playoffs might just be the one thing to give them the extra gas, right? To give them the, well, this is the moment where we actually have to play. You can't get too scrappy, because it might cost you the game. It might cost you the playoffs.
Yeah.
So what sort of gas? Gasoline, diesel, or copium?
I think they've got. They need three of them.
A terrifying.
They have the power of friendship, RMC. That's the most
friendship
OP gas in League of Legends.
True.
Here's my last word on this.
One more game.
I think the INTZ actually has a very good specific matchup into VKS, because I think
I agree with that.
Trigo and Damage are great at managing volatile aggressive bot lanes, and they can get aggressive themselves, and Trigo particularly I think was very good at tossing tossing offense back in the face of aggressive people when they step up against him. But Ninja Kiwi does not do that. Ninja Kiwi does not over-aggress in lane and throw stuff away. He's a super solid, reliable laner. He can pick Sivir. Look, okay, listen, all right? Look, he can pick the Sivir and just walk away and just kind of farm a lane, okay? He does. That wasn't lane, okay? That was pre-lane. That was pre-lane, all right? That was before the minions had spawned, so that's a different stage of the game entirely. But Ninja Kiwi is usually a very, very reliable laner who is not, I think, going to feed into an overextend and give advantage of Trigo Damage. I think that ZZK Gigo is going to be wild, but generally speaking, they're both playing super hard, and that's kind of evenly split, but ZZK could get an advantage. We know ZZK has a very good counterpool matchup, potentially, if he's got things he's prepping for specific matchups to try and deny the usual picks from Gigo. And I think Nosferus, I would favor him pretty heavily into Grevthar, because I think Nosferus is able to get an advantage there and can potentially be even more of a Grevthar than Grevthar is in terms of linking up with jungle and roaming around the map. I think he's been amazing at that. So
I agree with you, Trajan. The last thing I'll say on this topic, and then maybe we can move on, is just I feel like INTZ throughout the split has been a very low variance team, except for in top lane. So you just go top, make sure ZZK is able to have a good time in a Gigo, and I think INTZ will be fine. That's why, even though I actually love a lot of the points that you brought up, both RMC and Soph, about like I said, I think VOK is gonna make this series interesting. I don't think INTZ is like a massive favorite here, but I've got a better feeling about them into what is just a batshit crazy VOK team. Like that's it.
The series is going to be one up here. Like it's going to be one in the head, not on the rig. When it comes down to it, and VKS certainly have shown that they can clutch it out in a best of 5. So we'll see if they can do it. Yeah. Versus INTZ.
I like that you think we're going to be winning up here instead of losing up here, Trish.
I think so, man. I'm going to be losing in here and winning up here.
That's so good.
No.
But okay, let's do one quick discussion before we go on to the next round of playoffs, which is who had the biggest throw of the weekend. And now, this is a tough question. There were a lot of throws.
There's so many.
There's so many to think of. And there's already two that I have in my head already. So I will go last here, right? We didn't do a favorite moments. This is kind of the favorite moments of the episode. It's the favorite throw of the week. So, if anyone wants to start, if anyone wants to snap an easy one up, feel free to do so. Because I
snap an easy one up. Trajan, we had the misfortune of having to tell the story of this game. Red Game 3. It has to be Red Game 3, man. That was like, you had a 4-0 Zeri at like 20 minutes. How is that losable? I don't understand. They had a better scaling comp. It's just like, and then we saw like, not one, but 2 Jackie Love plays, as we already talked about earlier. I mean, that to me, like, there was a lot of throws this weekend. That one was baffling. I could not believe that.
And
that's how I knew. That's how I knew that when Red got ahead in Game 4 that they were going to lose the series. Like,
I just want to say the funniest part to me was that when you guys were casting that, all that ran through my head was that Hawk's grandma could play better than just because you sit that
literally.
B-boy when he played Zeri when he got 6 kills, right? And I'm looking at this and I'm like, no, you can't throw a game. And I'm just like, yep, Titan's proving me right in the worst possible way. Like,
Hawk's grandma could never make a play like that.
My grandma positions much more conservatively than Titan. Like,
jeez, okay, right. RMC.
Game 3 was absolutely brutal.
So we've got Titan love for Hawk. There was his turn of the weekend.
I'll give Titan some more love. Okay, maybe this one's not on Titan, but game 2, the Lucian R5 pick blew my mind when we saw it. You know how much I love drafts. So like seeing that pick there, I was like, I literally can't justify it with this composition. At best, you're playing for early game. You have no mid-late game. This is a live fast, die young comp. And they died young. This comp, it was not even close.
Specifically, Titan died young, to be clear.
Yeah.
I don't think he was ever born that game, to be honest with you guys. Like,
it was rough. Yeah, and I don't know if that's Titan's pick or whether that was, Kalek or, Nelson, but
I believe it's Titan's pick.
There's no way that was anything other than Titan being like, yo, let me body these kids. Like, I refuse to believe it was
game 1,
anything
pick
else.
me Lucian right now.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sure,
R5 too. Yeah, that
they
was
banned my Zaya. We'll watch this,
Oh, so grim. All right, Sophchan, what was your?
I'm not gonna keep beating the same note there. So I think I'm just going to talk about no, not Titan and not Red as well. I mean, although I do agree with you guys like so much, I think I want to talk about the second game for Pain versus INTZ because INTZ had everything in the second game.
Yeah.
It was like, okay, this is gonna get us to something, not a sweep. And then basically Pain just turns it around. I remember like being there in the arena and going, okay, this is gonna last a little longer. I can, go to the bathroom, grab a glass of water or something. I come back and Pain has won. I'm like, what did you do? What did you do? And I think that would be a collective fumble that INTZ had on that second game because it wasn't supposed to be a 3-0. It really wasn't.
I don't know.
That was a bag fumble for INTZ for sure. Also, honorable mention. Wait, Trajan, you should say yours, and then I'll give an honorable mention.
My pick was the game 3 ending for Pain INTZ.
Yeah, okay, that was my honorable mention. You did Ninja Kiwi TPing to Elder. Ninja Kiwi TPing to Elder.
I love Ziggs. I main Ziggs. I mained Ziggs for years, and I know he had Medjai's full build with Rabadons. You walk up, you one-shot towers. You do minimum 85% of a tower's HP with one auto. And he could have just kept going, man. Elder takes a while. He could have just walked it down mid. At the very least, you force them to back away and choose between losing or winning. And if you TP in, their comp is the 5v5 when you've got the Ziggs, man. And it just... That TP has... No, what are they doing? No, what are they doing? That's so...
Yeah. And it's so unfortunate because I think INTZ showed a lot of potential in this matchup because Pain was such a competitive matchup for them. And still, they were there. But then some decisions here and there just made you feel like, have you guys talked to each other when you made that play? Like, did you actually communicate? And at the end of the day, that 3-0 came in and it doesn't feel good for them. So maybe that's the extra gas that they are going to have in the lower bracket. We'll see.
Yeah. So...
That's VKS and Fluxu getting off scot-free in this segment.
So, did they throw super hard, or were they just incredibly messy and just took turns controlling?
Maybe it was just more of a brawl.
Incredibly messy.
I think part of the problem is also it's relative, right? Because the rest of the games get played clean for INTZ and Red. When they throw, it feels so much worse. Whereas when you're throwing so much already for Cade Stars and Fluxu, we're not worried about it. It doesn't feel like a throw in League of Legends. They're just playing baseball over there. We just kind of forgot about it.
It's not even baseball. It's just ping pong.
Yeah, exactly. It just keeps bouncing back and forth, right? So it's like, you threw, but you didn't have that much to throw. So the throw feels...
So the biggest throw in that series was a almost 5,000 gold throw from VKS in game 2 when House hits his Rabadons, and then it's not really a throw, the game's just over because you haven't won by the time Kaiser has hit 4 items, and the poke just started to become unplayable, right? VKS didn't misplay a big team fight, they just didn't end in time, basically. And then the comp just kind of Fluxu didn't make any more mistakes with a 4-item Kaiser and a 4-item Jace, or a 3-item Jace, and they just poked them out to win. So I wouldn't call that a throw. it was just kind of a time
That's
bomb.
the one game I didn't think we saw throws. That was the clean poke comp from Fluxu.
Yeah,
It's
exactly,
all the
right.
other games that had all the throws.
Yeah, the game 5 did have a 5,000 gold swing back towards Fluxu from 8k down to 3k down, but VKS still won. So
Yep.
because a certain
Yeah.
AD carry stepped into the mid lane without having any vision on bot side, and the game ended. And that was possibly the saddest thing about that series. Was
That's
just
pretty brutal.
Like,
Yeah.
just like
They've been doing so well
watching the
before
replay
that.
back and just seeing that Grell actually goes and just posts up in that bot side brush for like a full 30 plus seconds. He just clears out the vision, sits in
Yep.
the brush, folds arms, goes, wait.
Oh god, I
someone's gonna
remember
walk up.
that.
Someone's
Yep.
gonna walk up. I'm just gonna wait.
Yeah.
And then Brunsey walks right into
waiting.
the trap. It was actually, it wasn't even just like they spotted him and go, oh, we can just kill him. They were like, nope, we're gonna wait for him. We're going to kill him because he's gonna
Yep.
walk into this lane. And they read him like a book. And I guess at the time we didn't give enough credit to Grell because it just seemed like, why is he there? What is happening? But they
Yeah.
planned it, right? They set a trap and executed
Yeah.
really well on it. So credit to VKS for winning the whole series with a really just nicely set up trap. And if you misplay that, you can also just lose. So credits them there. But those are the throws. Let's take a quick look at the next round, though. Loud Pain in winners. We've talked a lot about VKS INTZ in the bot side, so we can maybe just focus on Loud and Pain since we're a little bit over an hour already. So, both won. Both had 3 really clean games. Loud had one where Red were just red hot and just then forgot. But
Yep.
what are we thinking? Predictions-wise, thoughts, comments on the state of the game here. Loud and Pain, RMC. I can tell you're conflicted. Oh, he's betting on the boys.
Oh, he's written
I
it down.
I have to. But notice there's no 3-0 this round. Like
For audio listeners, it's
His-
3-2 to Pain over Loud is what RMC had on his board.
historically, the only time Pain beats Loud in playoffs, it has been 3-2. So I think this will go with the full 5, and I think Pain eke out a win, and I think it's going to be sloppy. I am praying they can overcome their mental demons right now.
So if I was being serious about my prediction,
Mhm.
I would actually predict exactly what RMC just had. I think this is going to be a really competitive series. I think the battle in every lane is going to be really even. And these teams actually, in a weird way, like to play fairly similarly, except for the fact that Loud is much more aggressive, while Pain is much more defensive in their playstyle. But they both have threats in 3 lanes with junglers that love to help all 3. So I think RMC's prediction is very logically sound and probably what I would say. I think Pain still looks like the better team to me. I think Loud has just some weaknesses.
I think I can see
Their
where this is going,
over-aggression is really punishable. However, I have been following the CBLOL for really just this year. I'm pretty new to things. And based on what I've seen, it's a Loud 3-0.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, there it is. I can tell that's where we were going.
Following
man.
longer,
I can
Hawk.
feel it.
If you
I
had
can
been
feel it.
following longer, you wouldn't even have doubted that. You'd have just said that right away.
Let's go moving on. Yeah. So
I think I think I'm also logically sound here. I think it's going to be a game 5. I don't think there's any reason for this to be a sweep. Not a game 4, game 5, and I feel like I'm on the same board that it would be 3-2 for Pain, because I feel like Loud doesn't execute as well when they are behind the way that Pain does. I think that when Pain starts behind, they can come back much stronger in a mid lane game. And I think Loud, because of that over aggressiveness, can be punishable and can be just something that, well, we know they're aggressive. We just work on being a little more careful in our gameplay, and it works out well for Pain games. So in the draft, like looking that like from a theoretical perspective, when someone has a breach from making mistakes because they're over aggressive and the other one's just very good at defense, well, what'd you get from that? It's not because it's going to be that case that is not going to be super competitive. I still think it will because of the quality of the players overall. But at the end of the day, I still think Pain has a more sound synergy in the team to be able to pull it off.
man, I'm just looking at both of these rosters and I just can't find the difference, like where the game-winning advantage comes from. I just can't see it
Devoy's
anymore.
better.
It's definitely in the team play to me. Like,
Yeah.
I don't think there's like an obvious lane that's like exploitable personally.
No. I have no idea what the approach is going to be in draft here either for other teams. Like, who do we try and break? Which lane do we try and open up? Is
It's
it
probably
top
going to
lane?
change game to game too, if I'm being
Yeah.
honest with you. Like
gonna
one
be
game we're probably
jungle.
going to see like Robo Olaf, and the next game we'll see Robo on Cassante and Root on like Zeri. Like
Yeah.
The
it's-
carries for sure. I think jungle is probably going to get targeted by both sides though.
Yeah, I think Croc
True.
fares better in that scenario. I think I like Croc, especially recently, where he's shown us the Trundle and the Lee Sin, and he started to. He had a really rough start of the season. Don't get me wrong, but he's shown a bit more depth. If they do target the meta picks in
Hey,
jungle,
Karaoke showed us Trundle first. We didn't want to see it, but he showed
and
it
it
to us
lost,
first.
right? Did it lose?
It's not his fault though. It wasn't his fault. But yeah, he was
And to be
invisible
fair,
early game.
to Croc's Trundle game, that was the game that Red should have won. That was game 3, and Red are responsible for that loud win, not Croc's Trundle. So I think it's is it the Tino's A-Soul comes out of the woodwork again to make some sort of difference? I don't know, man.
Somebody check his PayPal if that
I'm
happens.
hey, Dean Kato at least can't play Ari because Tinos would play Swain. He can't play Ari the entire
True,
series.
He's got the Ari on.
True.
Big,
Yeah,
very
there you
big.
go.
That actually does matter, I think. That
Yeah,
matters,
literally.
but
like I think
It
having
does.
the counter pick in a certain lane to neutralize a threat without having to outskill them, which none of these lanes are going to be able to consistently outskill their opponents, in my opinion. Maybe bot lane in laning, maybe a BVO and Pro
Yeah,
Delta would be better
B4.
in lane, maybe. But I think that there's not a consistent like we can always play to this 2v2 or this 1v1 because it's going to be favored regardless, and then we can draft around that. I think that the draft answer and counter is going to be super important to actually deciding lane matchups with these players. I'm going to go loud 3-2. I'm not going to take pain
Okay.
ooh.
because
Okay.
I think that
Mhm.
loud in the same way are just showing us that kind of we've just been here before, guys. Like we know what we need to do. We know how to do business, and they were so far down against Red.
We know how to beat Pain.
And yeah, we've done this so many times.
Specifically Pain.
And we've beaten them,
Specifically, the only team.
and they've shown good comeback potential. Now it is against a very exploitable team that is Red, and Pain are not going to be that exploitable from ahead, I wouldn't imagine. But I just have to, in the same way that as RMC says, the only time Pain beats Loud is 3-2 and is before finals, right? I'm just gonna say the last playoffs Loud beat them in both forms, and they 3-1
Yeah,
them in
he
winners
did
and
it.
then
Okay.
3-0 in finals.
Yeah,
So
3-1
I'm
and
just gonna
3-0.
continue that streak. Yeah, somehow they'll beat them 4-0 this time. You know, it's just gonna.
Okay, Trajan,
Okay.
prediction.
4-0.
Yeah, my prediction is 4-0 Loud. Yeah, that's
Okay.
so it is going to be Loud, I think. So we have what? Do we have 2 Pains and 2 Louds? Do we have another Pain?
2 Pains and 2
Yeah,
Louds.
yeah,
so-
Sophchan's Spain too.
so if
Spain's
it's a Pain
Spain
as
too.
well.
I'm pain, yeah.
That is this is going to be like it's all come to this point. This is the culmination of both of their splits leading up to here, and we'll get the
Yep.
real showdown now. I think it went 1-1 in the main split. The first was the first game of the split where Pain just completely steamrolled them, and the second one was probably the best regular split game out of the whole thing.
Longest,
50-minute
for sure.
insane, one of the longest regular season games of any region in that split. So we'll get good games, that's for sure. And I think with that, that's about us. Let's wrap this up. We've gone a little bit over.
What about
an
the
hour
other
and
side?
10. Yeah. So
There's the other game this weekend.
I mean, I guess we can predict
3-1
experts.
INTZ.
We've talked about the matchup. I am also going 3-1
Okay,
INTZ,
okay.
to be clear. We've talked about the two teams in their matchup quite a lot, but what do we have predictions? 3-1 VKS for RMC.
Oh,
and
he's a VKS believer.
and
Okay.
Sophchan, do
Yeah.
you believe in the resilience in the titles that they have?
I think I think
That
3-1
sounds like a
sounds
no.
very reasonable. No, I think 3-1 sounds very reasonable for. Yeah, I think I'm on the same
Wow.
word.
Okay.
3-1,
wow,
3-8.
okay.
But we're
It's just-
split in who's winning the 3-1.
Okay.
Top to
Yeah.
bottom
Alright.
here. Yeah, we both have different ideas of who's got the good matchup. So we believe it's going to be clearer than topside, I guess, apart from Hawk, of course, in the winner's side finals. But we believe it's going to be a clear win, relatively speaking, for either side. But as we've seen how close 3-0s can get already with
Yeah.
Pain and INTZ, so we'll see what the outcomes of those are going to be. So thank you very much, everyone, for tuning in to another episode of Gringos Liberados. Of course, Sophchan, an honorary Gringo today, as not really a Gringo necessarily.
I'm not
you're
a
actually-
gringo.
No, so we have a native here to round out, but of course we're super happy to have you. And I guess remember everyone to tune in to the Twitch channel, twitch.tv/CBLOL English at just Saturday, Sunday this time, not Friday, Saturday, Sunday at usual time. So it's like 5 p.m. UK time, 9 a.m. Pacific, some other number of times. What's it in Brazil, Sophchan? What's the start time?
1 p.m.
1 p.m.
BRT.
1 p.m. BRT to get our winners, finals, and losers bracket kicked off. Thank you for watching. We'll hope to see you there. Have a wonderful rest of your days, evenings, mornings. And we'll see you then. Bye.